There are many reasons why Silent Hill 1 was the scariest game I've ever played, but if I had to pin down one exact reason, it would be the sound design. Sound is an extremely important part of horror, of course, but especially Silent Hill's brand of horror, which delivers a subtle, creeping and unnerving type of feeling, causing a near constant state of unease. Subtle sound design can make us question if a sound actually happened, and if so, wonder whatever made that noise. Not knowing what a thing looks like makes our imaginations run wild when we only know what they sound like. And our imagination will probably create something far more terrifying than what is making the horrific noise. But that does not mean sound cannot be used to create the exact opposite atmosphere too. That atmosphere being upfront and not leaving any room for subtlety at all, which can be terrifying. What people tend to forget with Silent Hill 1 is that it is extremely effective in producing a feeling of brooding dread and this previously mentioned loud, sheer terror, including jump scares. The wide majority of jump scares are accompanied by a loud noise. It's a human response to make us alert. It is pretty easy and effective, and getting one's sense overwhelmed can be a great source of horror before the visuals even come into place. Jump scares are easy to pull off too, but it's what happens before and after the jump scares that determines if they were effective or not. A jump scare with zero stakes out of nowhere is pitiful and ends with a groan. But a proper jump scare, built up by the environment, story, sound, pacing, can give you an adrenaline boost and scare the living daylights out of you. Silent Hill often gets treated as jump scareless, a dreadfest, but it has quite a few jump scares, and all of their jump scares are always effectively built up and paid off. When making an effective jump scare, you want to aim for having a person be aware that something is going to happen and jump out at them, but without letting them know exactly what is going to happen or when. This can make our imaginations wander again, as our minds start thinking, when will it happen and what will jump out at me? That's where proper horror comes from when doing a jump scare, at least in my opinion. Playing with timing can also have this effect by delaying the jump scare, creating a false sense of ease, which Silent Hill 1 does occasionally, as to not become too predictable. Jump scares are not a bad thing when done effectively, as shown in Silent Hill 1 and the Silent Hill franchise as a whole. Well, at least the 4 original Team Silent Hills, and PT. The jump scare acts as a final payoff, as it is the climax of the creeping atmosphere. I believe a game can be too creeping with no relief, as then you get numb to the elements around you. You need to have breathing room to really feel this ramp up. And these jump scares add a little bit of surprise into it as well, keeping you on your toes. A jump scare is a great way to pay off the subtle parts of the game while surprising you and keeping things interesting. It is hard to explain what makes Silent Hill 1 so unique with its sound and scares, other than saying it is a mix of subtle and the outright obvious, as you can only really get this by actually playing Silent Hill 1. But I will try and put you in the same state I was in when I first played Silent Hill. You are alone, walking through an unfamiliar town. It is cold and there are no signs of life, and snow and fog are obscuring your vision. Suddenly, a blaring, hideous sound begins to echo around you, surrounding you from all angles, slowly closing in. It's so loud you can't hear anything else. It is a repetitive sound, playing the exact same note over and over again. And now it sounds as if it's getting closer and louder. Then your brain starts to wonder. What is that sound? What is making it? Where is it coming from? What is making it? How do I stop it? Where do I go? Then it stops. It dissipates. It ends there. But sometimes, you never know when, there is something waiting for you. No chase sequences, no overbearing orchestral strings. Just an overwhelming anxiety-inducing song from the soundtrack composed by Akira Yamaoka with a touch of dark imagery. Speaking of the soundtrack, it is comprised of many unique and brash sounds, metal on metal, harsh screeches and distorted disembodied voices. Really, it is unpleasant to listen to, and it's one of the few cases I can think of where this is actually a good thing. It is a horror game. You are supposed to be uncomfortable. When sights are disgusting or disturbing to look at, the music should also be just as disturbing. You want this harsh racket to stop whilst being pursued by twisted and disturbing creatures. It is pretty mortifying. I should add that this is also done in short bursts. Otherwise, the constant sound and barrage of screeches would just be headache-inducing. You can sort of prepare yourself for the barrage of noises as well, as the way Silent Hill works is that each room is sort of like a mini level. This makes the pacing of Silent Hill pretty strange, as it can easily just ramp up or ramp down again just by entering a different room. Now this may seem not as scary, as after the initial shock, I know what's in there, but knowing I have to go back in there to further explore it, and listen to these screeching, god-awful noises, which just creep me out. It is terrifying. I don't want to give the impression that this is a bad soundtrack to listen to. Definitely not. It's only a few handful of songs that give this feeling of unease. In fact, quite a few of my favourite Silent Hill songs are in this game. You are listening to one right now. The soundtrack helps the slow, brooding moments, but it also works effectively in the heart-racing parts. And it is one of the key contributions Akira Yamaoka brought to the table with Silent Hill 1. And it helps this atmosphere of just in-your-face blaring noise to completely overwhelm you. But there's a lot of melodic stuff in here too. Most of it is melodic actually. Particularly some of the credit songs and some of the songs linking to other areas are very, very mellow. And some of them are just very, very catchy, which I'm surprised haven't been used by some bigger artists to sample yet. But as I'm focusing on why this game is so scary to me, I'm just going to try and focus on these songs specifically that I think are terrifying. You may be wondering, why would you subject yourself to this? Surely this can't be enjoyable. Well, every alarming section has a quiet payoff, a way to reset the meter to zero. And it is this reprieve after a hit of adrenaline that makes horror games, and specifically Silent Hill 1, so great to play. As the overbearing atmosphere disperses and you get breathing room, and you're rewarded with a story beat, or perhaps new information, or you complete a puzzle. If you've played Portal 2 and the satisfaction of completing a room and going on to the next one sounds great to you, that's the same thing with Silent Hill, and horror in general, as you overcome this hurdle in a game to get further into the story. There are songs in the game I would describe as pretty, which would go against every single descriptive word I have used in this entire video so far, as pretty and Silent Hill do not seem to go well, but it is the implementation of the soothing songs that give us a sense that things aren't too right in the town of Silent Hill. The most pretty song in the game is used in one of the darkest scenes in the entire Silent Hill franchise, when someone's reality is destroyed and they are left alone with nobody to save them, doomed to eternal damnation. It is hopeless and brutal, but this strange beautiful song is playing in the background as this scene happens. It is a rare moment in a game when it's a mix of happiness and somberness that smash together to create something all the more darker the more you think about it. Back to the horror part of the game, it isn't just the music that does the work. Voices of the creatures in Silent Hill are often more terrifying than what they actually look like physically. Nothing is more scarier to me than the combination of sound and interactivity in a game. Film is limited in what it can provide to the viewer, as when a frightening sound is made in a movie, you are passive. You watch what the protagonist does. But in a game, you need to make the active decision to move towards the sound, which provides a fear a film can never replicate. And Silent Hill is a perfect example of this. I remember very vividly on my first playthrough in the sewer section, it scared me almost to the point of quitting it entirely. I, myself as Harry Mason, had to make the decision to move closer to the origins of this sound. That's the only way to progress, and you have to go towards it. This is why Silent Hill 1 remains the most terrifying horror game I've ever played. The sound design just fills me with an anxious feeling and an overwhelming sense of dread, which can then just as easily disperse and change into a lighter atmosphere just to set me up again with another fright. Many will point out that the voice acting is very goofy.
Hold it. Where do you think you're going?
My daughter. I've got to find her.
But to me, it feels oddly charming and makes such a simple character like Harry likable in his quest for his daughter.
Daddy, where are you?
Cheryl!
I concede I could just be having nostalgia goggles, and maybe others who are unfamiliar with this franchise would find this laughable, and it may actually be a detriment to the atmosphere. But this gives me the Twin Peaks vibe, which is seen as an influence, especially of Silent Hill 2. And you also just don't get voices like this in games anymore.
So what am I supposed to do? I've got to save Cheryl.
It is simple.
Stop the demon. The demon taking that child's form.
Probably is nostalgia now I'm thinking about it. An unpredictable pro to this is that the game has aged very well by being a low polygon horror game from the PS1 era. As video game graphics become increasingly more lifelike and realistic, it also does become clean and more familiar. It can be hard to create a truly scary location whilst being nice looking, as when it looks real, it's more grounded in real life, which makes the atmosphere kind of more recognizable, when it's the things that we don't recognize and fail to comprehend that truly scares us. But just like how black and white is a stylistic choice now, when it was due to limited technology originally, the early PlayStation 1 low polygon games are now a distinctive style, which even have some horror games and shooter games trying to replicate that style and trying to capture that atmosphere, as these objects and environments do not look real at all, but they are noticeable and we recognize that they are real things that we can identify. I know that's a cupboard, but something in my head makes me say, that's not correct. Also, due to the limitations, they had to cover everything in fog and darkness, which makes the little tiny bit of a yellow halogen light make everything all the more dirty and hard to see. And I've said it quite a few times now that the things that we can't comprehend and see properly are more terrifying to us. And the ugly and rustic environments of the Otherworld just looks disgusting throughout, which is a pro, as this is the Otherworld, is supposed to be hell-like and off-putting. Overall, because of this, it looks really good aesthetically. I do wish the frame rate was higher, as on my PS3 playthrough it stumbled quite a bit. Doesn't help I was on the PAL version, but there you go. One important note too, while playing Silent Hill again for this video, 6 years after first playing it, it just doesn't scare me as much as it once did. I still know what lurks in the dark, and so the sound and scares aren't as effective, as I know what's making those sounds. They were so effective the first time that I still remember them, and so I can't recreate this feeling after knowing all of the magician's tricks. But despite that, I still got a feeling of dread from Silent Hill 1. That feeling of having no idea where you are, what you are doing, or where a sound is coming from is still here. The blending of tracks that make you want to leave the room instantly to stop the screeching is still here. And the sound effects which stick with you all the way while you're going through a dark, empty corridor in the Otherworld is still terrifying. It's just a shame that the enemies aren't as scary to me as I know what they are now. But that's the nature of it. I envy those who haven't played this game yet. This may come across as odd after describing the horrendous frights in this game, but I felt an odd comfort when playing this game again. This adventure as Harry Mason was filled with satisfying dopamine hits whenever I completed a tough puzzle, or discovered a new area, or defeated a boss, and the atmosphere looming over this entire game like a comfy nightmare blanket was a great escape from life for a bit. Is that weird? I'm not entirely sure, it probably is. Anyways, there is far more to this game, but I just wanted to speak about the sound design specifically, and a few other little bits. I haven't much more to add, so instead of keeping you longer with my rambles, I'll end the video here. See ya.